July 2016. Hillary Clinton, having won the Democratic presidential nomination, was overwhelmed with emotion. At the Democratic National Convention, Hillary addressed the audience and said, she said, "You've given me an incredible honor. We've just put the biggest crack in that glass ceiling." After Hillary said these words, the whole place erupted in applause. Most of the audience believed Hillary's presidency was definitely secured in Hillary's long political career. This was just another ordinary speech. The speech mentioned, "We've just put the biggest crack. We have made the biggest crack yet." It is to highlight their female identity. The so-called glass ceiling refers to the barriers women face that are difficult to overcome in the workplace. This is not a new concept. It was proposed as early as the 1970s. However, shortly after Hillary's speech, a post from a Twitter account turned the speech into a viral sensation. This account claimed that a casual remark by Hillary Clinton caused her to slip up. She said, "Someone will break the highest glass ceiling." This finally confirms the truth that we have always been repeating. The earth is flat. The earth is not a globe at all. The government has been lying. This outrageous statement left many netizens baffled. However, there were also some well-informed netizens who remained calm. In the comments section, they would enthusiastically educate other netizens about this mysterious organization. Even in the 21st century, there are still thousands of people who believe the earth is not a sphere. These people are called flat earthers. Regarding the land beneath our feet, what exactly does it look like? People from different cultures around the world have had various speculations. The ancient Egyptians believed the earth was a disk floating in the ocean. The ancient Chinese once proposed round sky and square earth. The ancient Greeks believed the earth was shaped like a shield. However, most ancient civilizations believed the earth was a flat, continuous plane. The main reason for this perception, of course, is that it aligns with human intuition. Regarding when humans recognize that the earth is a sphere, there are many different accounts, especially in the West. The process of recognizing the earth as a sphere was extremely tortuous, because the concept of a spherical earth did not align with religious theories. Many old-school evangelicals believed that anyone who dared to change the Jesus bylaws would lose their head. They often used physical means to criticize this heresy. Even within the church, many scholars believed the earth was a sphere. It was not until the early 16th century, after Magellan's fleet completed its circumnavigation, that the theory of a spherical earth truly became accepted by more people. Although more and more people began to agree with the spherical earth theory, it did not mean everyone did. For example, 300 years after Magellan's circumnavigation, in 1816, a boy named Samuel Burley Robotha was born in Manchester, England. As the son of a famous Manchester entrepreneur, Samuel, overwhelmed by wealth, was very confident from a young age. As a high-quality male of humanity, he began receiving a high-end education very early on. At the age of 7, Samuel was already being exposed to physics. At the same time, overwhelmed by his affluent life, feeling suffocated, young Samuel began to develop an interest in astronomy. Soon, young Samuel discovered a big secret. Newton was a dumbass. How young Samuel came to have this earth-shattering discovery, we do not know. But what is certain is that from a very young age, Samuel believed that all of Newton's theories were wrong. Everything he said was nonsense. When Newton's theories were taught at school, he would even walk out in protest. Of all of Newton's theories, the one Samuel disagreed with the most was Newton's claim that the earth is slightly flattened at the poles and elongated at the equator, making it an oblate spheroid. Samuel's stern father was shocked by his son's rebellious ideas. He quickly sent his son to his own father, Samuel's grandfather. He was a mathematician with a deep understanding of astronomy and a lifelong admirer of Newton. That is why Samuel's father sent the boy over, hoping the old man could quickly cure him. After hearing his grandson's explosive views, Samuel's grandfather quickly brought out his telescope to show his grandson the wonders of the universe, like the craters on the moon, and so on. Then he witnessed his grandson's lifelong stubbornness. Samuel, in his life, did not submit to mountains or rivers, only to his own mouth. Even with all the evidence staring him in the face, little Samuel still did not believe the moon was a giant sphere. Instead, he thought his grandfather's telescope was a kaleidoscope. After refuting the heretical idea that the moon is a sphere, little Samuel also made a thunderous declaration. "Grandpa, what you are saying is good, but that does not mean it is correct. I'm just young and weak now. But when I become a big shot in the future, I will prove it to everyone. You are all wrong." Speaking of which, we need to talk about why Samuel and Newton did not get along. The reason is that in 19th century England, religious power was still quite strong. As a rich second generation, little Samuel received enlightened religious education from a young age. With a preconceived religious worldview, little Samuel discovered that there was actually a group of godless rebels who often used Newton's theories to refute the Bible. How could this be allowed? Is not this turning the world upside down? Especially since Newton believed in the theory that the earth is spherical. Is not that just fooling idiot? How can people stand on a ball without falling off? Even a blind man can see that the earth is flat. How can anyone believe in the fallacy of a spherical earth? Frankly speaking, as a 19th century child, it is not unreasonable for Samuel to think this way. As he grew older, he would eventually realize his mistake, and that is exactly what happened. To systematically critique Newton, Samuel began to seriously study theology and science. After years of study, Samuel discovered, damn, it seems Newton was right. Then Samuel got depressed. No, Newton can't be right. If the earth is a sphere, does not that mean there is no heaven? Starting from the age of 18, Samuel fell in the torment of doublethink. He swung back and forth between science and religion. To escape this pain, he began frequently attending lectures and social events, hoping to gain some inspiration from them. Then Samuel encountered a historical figure, Robert Owen. If you still remember your history textbooks, you might recall that in 19th century Britain there was a once popular ideology, utopian socialism, and Robert Owen was its representative. As an upright and kind entrepreneur, Robert Owen established several small communities in the 19th century, striving to achieve cooperative production by improving workers' treatment and building utopian society. In addition to practice, Owen often gave speeches in various places to promote his theories. In 1835, Samuel happened to attend one of Owen's lectures, and he was surprised to find that Owen could solve his problems. Samuel discovered that although Owen talked about materialistic economic issues, his ultimate goal was to establish a heaven on earth as conceived in religion. Does not this unify materialism and idealism, bringing them together as opposing unities? Therefore, Samuel quickly became a supporter of Owen, following Owen and giving speeches everywhere. 3 years later, Samuel actually found a job under Owen. In the autumn of 1838, a wealthy farmer named William Hodson, decided to put Owen's theories into practice. He bought a large farm, wanting to build the utopia Owen envisioned. As one of Owen's followers, Samuel was hired by William, the supervisor of this ideal community. Practice proves that, after Samuel's management, William's community, to put it mildly, was not exactly well organized. At the very least, it was a complete mess. After several seasons of planting, compared to Samuel's farm, the Tanganyika groundnut scheme could be considered quite fruitful. But even though the farm's management was not very successful, Samuel did not come away empty-handed. During the farm's development, the Bedford Level Canal near the farm caught Samuel's attention, because he found that this river was just too straight. The canal that Samuel discovered was an unusually straight river. After carefully observing this river, Samuel had an idea. This river seems perfect for verifying a question I have had for many years: is the earth flat or round? In 1839, Samuel began his experiment. He launched a boat upstream in the canal and sailed downstream himself. During this time, he used a theodolite to measure the distance between the bridge and the boat. Meanwhile, he had an assistant on shore measure the distance the boat traveled with a tape measure. When the theodolite showed that the boat had traveled 6 miles, Samuel asked his assistant for the measurement. It was also 6 miles. Then the conclusion was clear. Samuel believed, if the earth were a sphere, then the earth's surface must be curved. The earth's surface is curved. Theodolite measurements must differ from those taken with a measuring tape. He believed that if the theodolite showed 6 miles, the measuring tape result should be at least 24 miles. But today, the two results were the same. This clearly proves the earth is flat. Although from a modern perspective, Samuel's experiment is so flawed that it is hard to know where to begin. But he personally became convinced from then on that the earth is flat. At this point, another question arose for him. If the earth is flat, then why was Magellan's fleet able to return to Europe? With this question in mind, Samuel returned to London. After arduous research in the library, Samuel finally achieved his enlightenment. Several years later, Samuel presented his own theory of flat earth, zetetic astronomy. In the model established by Samuel, the earth is a flat disk centered on the North Pole. The disk is surrounded by towering walls of ice, and celestial bodies like the sun and moon revolve above the disk. So how do you explain Magellan's circumnavigation? Samuel believed Magellan's fleet did not travel in a straight line, but rather took a very large detour. So, actually, that fleet, it went around the continent instead of circling the earth. And so, at the end of 1849, Samuel published a small booklet of only 16 pages titled Zetetic Astronomy, proving the sea is a perfect plane, and that the earth is not a globe. After this booklet was published, it immediately caused a public uproar. Although Samuel's theory was only 16 pages long, it was indeed, since Magellan's circumnavigation, the first flat earth theory that could justify itself. Therefore, Samuel immediately attracted the support of many religious conservatives. Everyone often laughed at Newton was reckless, and Copernicus lacked wisdom. Samuel was flooded with speaking invitations, and the audiences were always packed. During his speeches, people often argued with Samuel on the spot, and as a human-shaped Walking electronic toll collection. Samuel was already used to automatically arguing. He often relied on his superb eloquence to refute people until they were speechless. Even when faced with particularly difficult questions to refute, Samuel had his own methods. For example, during a speech in Blackburn, a student asked Samuel, "You say the earth is flat. Then why is it that when we are at the docks and watch a ship returning from the ocean, we see the mast first and then the ship?" Samuel immediately responded, "This question is actually very simple. Let us take a 15-minute break first. I will explain it to you in detail when we get back." In a quarter of an hour, the entire city will no longer be able to find Samuel. He bailed. In short, because he was eloquent, could escape, and was very resourceful. Samuel's influence grew. But the 19th century was in an era of rapid technological development. With the advent of inventions such as hot air balloons, the loopholes in Samuel's zetetic astronomy became more and more apparent. He could only keep patching up his theory. Moreover, after becoming a celebrity based on the flat earth theory, Samuel's thirst for knowledge plummeted. Not only in theoretical research, he invested less and less energy. Instead, he started using his fame to sell miracle drugs like mighty pills. In 1861, when 46-year-old Samuel Robotham married a 15-year-old wife, the flat earth theory basically entered a period of theoretical stagnation. But although Samuel himself slacked off, his many followers remained very interested. In 1865, the Zetetic Astronomical Society was founded. A large group of heroes joined the society, such as William Carpenter, a major publisher from Greenwich. William Carpenter, the general assessment of him at the time was, this guy was able to chew iron wire and weave a fence. He is really good at making things up. With his additions, Samuel's 16-page booklet was expanded by him to a full 8 books, and he gave the book a famous subtitle, "The Earth is Not a Globe." For example, Paul Kruger, as the president of the Transvaal Republic, Paul, even in diplomatic settings, never forgot to tell people about the doctrine of flat earth theory. Of course, any organization easily becomes troublesome with too many people. In 1870, a member of the Zetetic Astronomical Society named John Hampton pulled a bad stunt. In various newspapers, published a reward. If someone can use experiments with rivers or other bodies of water to prove the earth is curved, I will immediately give him £500. Never go back on my word. Upon seeing the reward in the newspaper, President Samuel was furious. Who does Hampton think he is? If you have got nothing to do, go play with a lighter. Why is he doing this reward experiment? The reason Samuel was angry is simple. After years of practice, Samuel was one to stir up trouble while also being afraid of it. He already knew in his heart that his flat earth theory was unreliable, and his only experiment was that flawed experiment from back then. That experiment where a blind cat ran into Johnny is the foundation of the entire flat earth building. It can't be verified casually. What if something is verified? This system relies on bugs to run. It can't be changed. Sure enough, after Hampton's reward, a big shot stepped in. Alfred Russel Wallace publicly declared, stating that he could do the experiment himself, inviting people from all walks of life in a week to come to the banks of the Thames to witness it together. Alfred Wallace, a famous British naturalist, geographer and biologist. If Darwin had not published In the Origin of Species first, he could very well have been the father of evolution. Originally, this British Wallace, compared to the flat earthers, he was on a completely different level. Normally, he would not bother with a nutcase like Hampton, but as luck would have it, Wallace had a bad investment at the time, and he was short on cash. So, he decided to use this opportunity to make some extra money for himself. From today's perspective, Wallace's experiment was very simple. He found a bridge in a river. Then, 6 miles upstream and downstream, he set up a pole on each side. The height of the 2 poles from the river surface was exactly the same. Then he installed a telescope on the bridge. Its height was also exactly the same as the poles, and when observing the poles through the telescope, it was clear that the height of the 2 poles was different, and this height difference was due to the curvature of the Earth. Although Wallace's experiment here was not perfect, it was much more rigorous than Samuel's back then. Sure enough, after the experiment, the media immediately declared it a success. This result broke Hampton. Because he was so confident in his zetetic astronomy theory, Hampton did not believe anyone could succeed. So, confidently, he bet the newspaper £500, but the newspaper immediately declared the experiment a success and gave the money to Wallace. Now Hampton was upset. In fact, £500 was almost Hampton's entire fortune. He never thought the money could actually be given away. Therefore, after Wallace's experiment succeeded, Hampton immediately stated that he would never acknowledge the experiment. He accused Wallace of tampering with the telescope and of cheating in the experiment, demanding his money back. As for the demand for the money back, Wallace, of course, refused. You set up the reward yourself. I earned the money through my own ability. You bought the telescope yourself. Why say I cheated? But Hampton, who was already on the verge of bankruptcy, started to act shamelessly. Anyway, you cheated. If you do not refund the money, I will sue you. I will also ruin your reputation in the media. Or else, let us fight one-on-one. Believe it or not, I will default on your health insurance. Wallace was furious. He directly sued Hampton for personal threats and defamation, thus began a protracted lawsuit. Eventually, After spending thousands of pounds in legal fees, the British court ruled that Hampton was guilty of making personal threats and defamation, and sentenced him to 1 year in prison, but his reward that year was also invalid. Wallace had to return the money to him. In the end, Wallace lost a lot of money and became haggard, repeatedly tossing and turning. Very tired. It is bitter to be entangled by a mad dog, a waste of effort. And people suffer. Due to this disturbance, Wallace had almost no energy to do his own work. This ordeal caused the great scientist years of grief. However, although Wallace lost some money, the Flat Earth Society suffered an even greater loss. As a leading figure in the scientific community, this controversy surrounding Wallace led to widespread public criticism of the Flat Earth Society. Hampton's obnoxious personality also completely ruined the organization's image. So, after this debacle, the influence of Zetetic astronomy sharply declined. The year is now 1884. Due to an accidental carriage accident, the founder of Zetetic astronomy, the great sage and teacher of the Flat Earth movement, Samuel Rowbotham, was seriously injured. After lying at home for a few months, he died. After the president died, the Zetetic Astronomical Society was left without a leader. The organization's funds were quickly depleted, with no one willing to take over the organization. At this time, a woman named Elizabeth Blount stepped forward and announced, "I will take it. I will fund the organization." Elizabeth Blount was the wife of a British baron back in the day. In a typical aristocratic marriage, Lady Blount had no affection for her husband, who was 17 years older than her. She was only staying with him for the sake of his 6,000 acres of land, which barely kept her from divorcing him. Due to her unhappy marriage, Blount could only see. She needed some hobbies to pass the time. She gradually became fascinated by astrology, and she joined the Zetetic Astronomical Society, becoming a flat earther. Originally, Lady Blount was just an ordinary member, because after Samuel died, the Flat Earthers were about to shut down. Lady Blount stepped forward at this time, saying that if no one was willing to take over, they could elect her as president. Although before this, Lady Blount had neither social experience nor scientific knowledge, but she quickly used her unique advantage to save the association. This advantage is called using a big hat to suppress people. As a baroness from an old, established London family, Lady Blount simply disdained to engage in any scientific arguments. Instead, she focused on doing some social work. First, she used her family's resources to attract a large number of generals, bishops, and other high-ranking officials to join the association. As a result, the Zetetic Society changed its former low-class image and became a very high society organization. Pulling out the membership roster, Newton himself would have to stand and offer a toast. Besides just upping the ante, Lady Blount also focused on public opinion. Thanks to her financial clout, she announced that those pamphlets we used to print, the ones that looked like they came from a village toilet, were all to be discarded. We will find the best printing house and the most outstanding writers. We will start our own newspapers and magazines and give them all away for free. Then we will create a few stage plays and tour them for free. We will definitely make a name for the organization. After completing these two tasks, the Zetetic Astronomical Society finally turned the corner. At this point, Lady Blount played her real trump card. She wrote letters to Christian publications. The core message is just one sentence. The goal of this organization is, based on actual scientific research, to spread knowledge related to natural cosmology, in order to prove the Bible is without error. Sure enough, when Lady Blount put forward this slogan, many Christian churches immediately expressed their support for her, turning the tide for the flat earth theory, allowing it to redevelop. As the 20th century arrived, Lady Blount returned to the Bedford Canal where Samuel had conducted his experiment years ago. She did the experiment again, and declared the experiment a success, complete with photos. The flat earth theory once again rose to prominence. However, just as Lady Blount was preparing to redouble her efforts, a small accident interrupted her plans. World War I broke out in 1914. As this earth-shattering war began, the flat earth debate came to a complete end. After all, before the heavy artillery of the warring parties, no ground could remain flat. The Universal Zetetic Society, which once had over 10,000 members, fell completely silent from then on. The data they had accumulated over the years was sealed away in museums. Originally, if nothing unexpected had happened, this story should have ended there. However, in the Tongliao universe, in July 1927, a young Englishman gazed at the stars from his home in Dover. Suddenly, he had a brilliant idea. Why should we waste energy traveling long distances by plane? All we need is a balloon to rise into the atmosphere and remain still, relying on the Earth's rotation. We wait till it turns to the desired location, and then descend. Would not that work? On that summer night, this man named Samuel Shenton, in his small head, a great doubt arose. He did not understand why before no one had thought of this idea, but he felt that his idea would surely become the key to wealth in the new era. However, while trying to attract some venture capital for his brilliant idea, Shenton was met with widespread ridicule. This puzzled the young Shenton greatly. Such an impeccable idea. Why was no one willing to invest? With deep doubt, Shenton began to search for answers, and searched for more than 20 years, until one day, he was in a small reading room at the British Museum. In a small reading room, he stumbled upon material left behind by the Zetetic Astronomical Society. Within these materials, Shenton was surprised to discover that his idea for a suspended air balloon had been conceived many years ago. Someone had already come up with it. Moreover, This predecessor had explained in detail the reasons why this concept could not succeed. The Earth is not a globe at all. The so-called Earth's rotation is a lie. The Earth is flat. After reading this article, Shenton had a revelation. It turns out that I was not wrong all along. It is the world that is wrong. In the following days, he read all the articles left by the Zedeo Society. After reading all the articles, he finally believed that the authorities had been hiding the fact that the Earth is flat. Therefore, as a flat Earth theorist transcending time and space, Shenton immediately decided that he must not let the predecessors' valuable legacy be buried. At the same time, after summarizing the theories of his predecessors and combining them with his own extensive knowledge, Shenton finally took it a step further and proposed his own Shenton's worldview. In Shenton's model, the Earth is still a disk centered on the North Pole. The South Pole is still an impenetrable ice wall, but he made up for a loophole that Samuel could not explain back then. Day and night. In Samuel's model, the Earth is just a big plate. The sun hangs from the dome. So, when the sun appears, the whole world should be in daylight. This does not explain the existence of time differences. Shenton's explanation for this is that the sun is like a flashlight. It projects a beam of light onto the ground. The area within the beam is daytime. The area outside the beam is nighttime. He actually managed to patch up this loophole himself. The loophole filling God activates. Anyway, after finding enlightenment at the museum, Shenton decided to reorganize the Flat Earth Society. In 1956, he registered in Dover, the International Flat Earth Society, and then performed everywhere. He traveled around giving speeches and cutting ribbons. According to him, even George Bernard Shaw attended his lectures. However, lacking Samuel's eloquence or Lady Blount's financial backing, Shenton's path as a preacher was quite bumpy. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Apart from some ignorant kids, hardly any serious people paid attention to him, let alone ticketed lectures. The reason for this difference, besides the difference in ability between the two leaders, is mainly due to the different times. Compared to the 19th century, the spherical Earth theory after World War I had long become a social consensus, and more importantly, Shenton's timing was not great either. In late 1956, Shenton decided to reorganize the Flat Earth Society. October 4, 1957, a piece of news dealt him a critical blow. The first artificial satellite, the Soviet satellite Sputnik 1, was launched. With the launch of the Soviet satellite, many British media outlets remembered this guy who, a few months prior, decided to promote the Flat Earth theory, because this kind of joining the King Army in '49 hero is really rare. Reporters flocked to interview Shenton. What do you think about the Soviet satellite's launch and its orbiting? Faced with the irrefutable facts, Shenton could only force the issue like Britain stirring shit in the toilet. He told reporters that the satellite was just above the disk world. It just circled around. It was not orbiting at all. You can sail around the Isle of Wight. Does that prove the island is a sphere? Shenton was quite pleased with his explanation. Although it was sudden, he managed to justify it after all. But what he did not expect was that he thought the launch of Sputnik 1 was just a sneak attack, but it turned out to be a combo. With the launch of the first satellite, the great space race between the US and the Soviet Union began. News of satellite launches came one after another. Each time, reporters would go and interview Shelton. By 1961, Shelton had become an international celebrity. Interviewing Shelton after space news broke became a regular segment for major media outlets, and Shelton continued to stubbornly deny everything. For example, in early 1961, he said, sending satellites into space was just a deceptive trick. The government would never be able to send people into space. On April 12, 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin flew into space aboard the Vostok 1 spacecraft, becoming the first human in space. Facing the swarm of reporters, Shelton, utterly defeated, had to change his tune, saying astronauts went to space does not prove the Earth is a sphere. February 20, 1960, astronaut John Glenn rode the Friendship 7 spacecraft into space, successfully orbited the Earth 3 times. And John Glenn had a rather wicked sense of humor. After orbiting the Earth, John Glenn specifically asked Shelton to apply for membership in the Flat Earth Society. After one blow after another, Shelton finally broke down. Amidst the nationwide schadenfreude, Shelton was so angry that he suffered 2 consecutive strokes. He could barely walk by 1964. Then, when he recovered, and was just able to read the newspaper, he got so angry he had another fit. The year 1964 coincided with the UK general election. That year, John Powell, a British conservative MEP, in order to mock and attack the Labour candidate, Harold Wilson, used all his life's effort to come up with what he thought was the most vicious adjective possible to the media. He mocked Harold as a flat earther. As it turned out, this label was indeed too devastating. As soon as the flat earther remark came out, Harold immediately broke down. You can attack my character, but you can't insult my intelligence. You can curse my ancestors. How could you call me a flat earther? He immediately retorted to Powell, you are the flat earther. Your whole family are flat earthers. Amidst the fierce name-calling between the two, Shenton, who had just managed to get out of bed, almost collapsed again out of anger. Infuriated, he wrote letters to both parties in protest, but they were ignored. He could only stand in front of the parliament and curse them himself. As for Shenton's later experiences, they were so tragic that it is hard to write about them. First spacewalk in 1965. First clear picture of Earth in 1968, 1969. Photograph of Earth from the Moon. In almost every major milestone in space history, Western journalists never failed to ask Shenton for his opinion. They always ran to Shelton to get his take. And poor Shelton, he could only constantly revise his theories. After the first spacewalk, he claimed it was just walking above the giant disk of land. After the first photo of Earth was taken, he claimed those photos were doctored. Then, after Apollo 11 launch, Shelton became the first to accuse them of faking the moon landing. He believed those astronauts were hypnotized. Those photos were probably taken in a studio. And then, that was it. Due to the media's repeated morbid curiosity, Shelton finally collapsed from anger. March 1971. Samuel Shenton, the reviver of the Flat Earth Society, finally died of anger. The Flat Earth Society he had reorganized was also on the verge of disintegration. However, I am afraid even Shenton himself could not have imagined that in such difficult circumstances, his great cause would actually have a successor. One day in 1930, at an elementary school in Texas, USA, a geography teacher, was showing students a globe. Among the many curious children, a child named Charles Johnson asked a question: if everything is built on a rotating ball, why is not anything falling off? Maybe the teacher was just too lazy and did not want to explain gravity to the kids. He simply told little John, if you put a bucket of water on your head and spin it fast enough, the water won't spill. After hearing this from his teacher, little John went home, found a bucket of water, put it on his head, and started spinning, and successfully earned himself a beating, since his quest for knowledge was physically interrupted. Heartbroken, little John became a massierist from then on. He quit school and stayed home to become self-taught. Learning without thinking is confusing. Not thinking without learning is carefree. Years later, Johnson lived up to expectations and became a cowboy. Then, a romance like a bouquet of flowers changed his life. In 1959, Johnson walked into a record store in San Francisco and bought an album by Eddie Gorma. However, Johnson was surprised to find that there was a dark-haired girl in the store buying the same record as him. Feeling that it was rare to find a kindred spirit, Johnson immediately went over to start a conversation. Then he learned that this girl named Marjorie not only had similar taste in music, but was also a vegetarian. At the same time, they both opposed vivisection. Such two unpopular beliefs could actually coincide. Then, after a period of conversation, the young couple then discovered their third shared hobby: geodesy. Oh my God. It is like the matchmaker handcuffed them together. Cupid shot them with a Maxim gun. The two, feeling overwhelmed, were extremely excited. Finally, after some hesitation, Marjorie revealed her other obscure belief: Dear Johnson, I actually think the Earth is flat. In that instant, Johnson's mind went blank. What is this? This is love. A match made in heaven. After confirming such an obscure belief could actually match perfectly, a couple decided to get married right then and there. After the wedding, the couple continued to herd sheep while also delving deeper into the study of flat Earth theory. Then they discovered that in the U.S., a land full of heroes, there was not a single flat Earth organization. Fortunately, with extensive media coverage, they soon learned that in faraway Great Britain, there was a leading academic, Shenton, who was upholding the truth of flat Earth theory. The couple immediately wrote a letter requesting to join the society. Shenton quickly approved their request. However, a few years later, the late Master Shenton was angered to death by the unethical media. The Flat Earth Society in distant Britain completely collapsed as well. Seeing the esoteric artifact of the throne without an owner, the Johnsons were extremely anxious. He immediately wrote to Shelton's estate, requesting that the Flat Earth Society move west to the United States. He was willing to take over the organization, seeing that the business was about to fail. Someone actually wanted it. Johnson's request was immediately granted. So, in 1972, Shelton's title as chairman of the Flat Earth Society, along with a bunch of the society's scriptures, were handed over to Johnson. In a small cabin on a hillside in California, Chairman Johnson officially began his reign, ready to make the Flat Earth Party great again. However, unlike Shelton, who enlightened himself in the library as a childhood dropout and a Mesite, Johnson's cultural background was quite limited. Therefore, his approach was completely different from his predecessors. Johnson no longer tried to explain any model theories. Instead, he began to develop a uniquely American flat Earth theory, focusing intently on conspiracy theories. The most classic example is, if you look at the United Nations logo, it is a map of the flat Earth drawn by our founder Samuel. Those politicians are deliberately misleading us. The Earth is a globe in the country with the most prevalent conspiracy theories. Johnson's theories in America, it developed rapidly, entering the 90s. Their membership had exceeded 3,000 people. However, in 1995, the organization suffered a devastating blow. In 1995, an accidental fire struck the headquarters of the International Flat Earth Society. Faced with all the organization's documents and his seriously ill bedridden wife. Johnson decisively chose to save his wife after the fire. Although the couple was safe, all the Flat Earth Society's data, including the roster and contact information, were destroyed. The organization was forced to disband in a way that no one had expected. Years later, as the Johnsons passed away one after another, the Flat Earth Society was completely finished. But right at that moment, the Internet age arrived. With the arrival of the Internet age, a large number of Flat Earth theories were published online. Soon, someone registered a Flat Earth forum. In the open forum, believers in the Flat Earth theory could constantly communicate. In the Clash of Ideas, Berber Naraber John Herrick Leak Skill New York Harngan Original. In the Clash of Ideas Berber Naraber John Herrick Skill New York Harngan Original. Apply the town with $8 million last pink industry G last week uphold funding because. In the Clash of Ideas Apply the town with $8 million last lot single last week uphold funding because. This theory has not only been promoted ply the town with $8 million decapult funding because all yubu. Fox News. Com John Harm. This theory has not only been promoted ply the town with $8 million decapult funding because. This theory has not only been promoted u gika u. Fox News. Com John Herrig. This theory has not only been promoted sites about. Harrigan Corper. This theory has not only been promoted, it even gained international influence. In Canada, Flat Earthers built a Flat Earth Museum. In Italy, Flat Earthers have been organizing offline meetings since 2010. The entrance fee for the events is as high as €20. They believe that the so-called round Earth theory is entirely a government hoax aimed at concealing the truth of their rule. NASA, which has always practiced the round Earth theory, is actually just a big Disney. All those astronauts are just actors. Artificial satellites are fake. Flying around the Earth is fake. The moon landing is also fake. In this conspiracy, the most evil ones are American politicians. The Italian Flat Earth Society claims that American politicians are planning to establish a new America whose only value is consumerism. Soros is the one pulling the strings of that evil plan. And so on. Although the Flat Earth Society often attacks the U, there are quite a few supporters of the Flat Earth theory. In the U itself, a reporter once randomly interviewed 8,000 people in the U. 1/6 of them were unsure if the Earth is a globe. Many boss are also supporters of the Flat Earth theory. With the continuous development of the Internet, the era of news media having the final say is gone forever. With the continuous spread of Flat Earth information, Flat Earth organizations around the world are springing up like mushrooms. According to 2020 statistics, on the Internet alone, the number of Flat Earth organizations has exceeded 1,000. If venerable masters like Samuel Shenton could see this grand occasion today, they would be satisfied. On February 22, 2020, an American named Mike Hughes, a Flat Earther, decided to launch himself in a homemade rocket. In order to break the government conspiracy, he wanted to take a picture of the Flat Earth for everyone. Prior to this, Hughes had already made 3 attempts, but in 2020, during his 4th attempt, Hughes' parachute failed, and he tragically died. For Flat Earthers, Hughes was nothing short of a martyr in the search for truth. Many of them believe that one day, the fact that the Earth is flat will be recognized by the world as the truth. Great sages like Samuel Shenton will eventually return like lightning.